to everyone for staying with us. We're live for you from Osogbo, the capital of Osun State, where we're bringing you the robust coverage of the Osun State governorship election, which is less than 24 hours before the poll open. My colleague Gimba Rumar is been there hankering from our Lagos studio, pivoting these very robust coverage that we have given for you for these 2 hours also. So let's get back to the conversation, everyone, shall we? So I have with me Mr. Olusegun Agbaje. He's a resident electoral commissioner of INEC in Osun State. He's the man directly in charge of this election also. Mr. Clement Unwankwo is the convener of the Civil Society Election Situations Room for this election. Thank you so much, gentlemen. You heard what Mr. Gbaja said about the issues of mobile phone, and these are critical issues forming how this election will pan out tomorrow. Perhaps a policy that INEC is putting in its guidelines. I don't know if it's already in your guideline, because I'm not sure INEC can practice anything that is not in the guideline or in the Electoral Act. Well, how does this come to you, Mr. Unwanko? No use of mobile phone in the cubicle.
I think that we're dealing with a very serious situation of vote buying. INEC, we've tried to interrogate what INEC means. The resident electoral commissioner has made the point, which INEC has clarified repeatedly, that this relates to the perimeter of the point where people thumbprint, which is inside the voting cubicle. Usually this takes less than 2 minutes for a person who is voting to go into that cubicle and thumbprint. 2 minutes of absence of a handset, telephone, I think is sufficient and good sacrifice to make in order to ensure that we do have a reduction in the syndrome of vote buying. It's a major problem. I think when we come here, we see what is going on. We see people even willing to hawk their votes on the streets, asking who is going to buy the vote. I think every measure that needs to be put in place to cure and remove this scourge is really very important. And
you think it should form major part of INEC new guidelines?
I think it's important. If this is not already in its guidelines, this needs to be in it until we cure the scourge. But beyond asking people not to go into the cubicle with their phones and cameras, we need to have a rigorous enforcement against electoral offenses. This is a major one, and we've made the point repeatedly about putting in place an electoral offenses commission. And I must say it's very welcome, the decision of the president to send to the National Assembly a bill creating the Electoral Offenses Commission. This is a very important bill. It needs to open up, of course, to public debate and public hearing, and we need to see the National Assembly and the president work harmoniously to get this bill in place in good time.
Since you're a lawyer, Mr. Nwanko, and I'll put it to you straight, is INEC in a dire situation, considering the fact that, for example, tomorrow, should INEC find anyone who is found culpable in buying or selling votes, what is the worst that INEC can do in that scenario? Because INEC is handicapped in some ways in terms of arresting, prosecution of this. INEC is just an umpire.
Well, clearly the logistics of operations of election means that INEC would have a challenge confronting voters. Of course, it can't try to stop people from going into the cubicle with their phones, and I would think that given the number of INEC officials in a polling unit, they can enforce stopping people from going into the polling booth with their phones. Where, of course, someone contravenes this, INEC will be challenged in apprehending and bringing that person to account, which is where we hope that the security services that have deployed such massive numbers will be able to come in.
Because we have found situation where people will accuse security agents of looking away when this kind of scenario plays out.
Well, part of the training of security agencies now needs to expand to include ensuring enforcement of the electoral regime in a polling vicinity. But again, we have to be quite sure that the security services are acting in a non-partisan way to ensure that the laws are respected. Part of the challenge always is with state institutions respecting the need to be non-partisan, and we continuously call on the police to shed partisanship in carrying out its responsibilities.
Just quickly before I ask Mr. Agbaje to weigh in on this issue and what INEC will be doing tomorrow, with all of this campaign against vote buying, do you still think that we might see incidents of vote buying tomorrow?
Well, I think the idea is to anticipate that vote buying and indeed other electoral offenses would happen, and that's why if the police is deploying such massive numbers, they should be prepared to arrest people. The police has not formed the habit and practice of arresting electoral offenders, and that's a major problem. That's why this has persisted with impunity. So the hope that part of the briefing of the policemen is to non-partisanly apprehend electoral offenders at polling units.
Mr. Agbaje, is it frustrating for INEC, knowing full well the extent that which you can carry out your duties in the light of the law, what you can do for electoral offenders? Tomorrow, how far can you go?
We have partnered effectively with various security agencies. As we talk, the various agencies partnering with us tomorrow in ISIS are fully charged and have been fully directed by the authorities that they should cooperate and make sure that they apprehend the offenders if they see them tomorrow. We do hope most sincerely that this state has been a very peaceful state, and I used to say it's one of the most peaceful states in Nigeria. I do not expect that after saying all this, people will still want to dare the security agency, because the agencies are already there. In fact, even other underground cover agents are also around to ensure that those who think that probably the uniform agencies will not be able to do it, they are also there tomorrow to see and also ensure that they are properly apprehended and dealt with.
So you are telling Nigerians that it's going to be a tough day for vote buyers and even vote sellers?
Both of them are going to have it very rough tomorrow.
So let's talk about your deployment tomorrow. It's actually unusual for INEC to deploy sensitive materials 48 hours before election. You did that in this scenario. Why?
It is not unusual. Even in 2014 here in the same Oshogbo, we collected on Thursday, deployed them on Thursday, and because the logistics that what we are trying to do in INEC is closing the gap that we used to have in the past. When people would leave headquarters of INEC in the state early in the morning to be going to local government from there to PU, and then at times 9, 10 o'clock they have not arrived there. But these days, we moved the materials yesterday. They got to local government safely with party agents and security officials and our own officials.
Are you considering the issues of security of the ballot and the sanctity of the ballot papers at a detriment, considering logistics at a detriment of the security and sanctity of the ballot materials?
Yeah, that is why we have security people with us, and the agents are also with us. They were in the local government, and they are, between yesterday and today, this afternoon, they're able to share it along array basis. And this afternoon, as I talk, all of them are now at the racks. Racks are where like a holding facility, where all the personnel that are going to work at the PUs tomorrow, their security personnel, and other officials, agents, if they like, who are going to stay this night, they will share it according to on polling unit basis. And very early tomorrow morning, before 7:30, all our people, all our polling units in the state should have been ready.